So we've got a simulated recording here. Angle's a little bit behind, so it's going to be a little different to see all the things we'd want to see, but overall, not too shabby. So with this swing, what we're going to be able to take a nice peek at is if we don't have much restriction in our lower body and we really get the club up nice and high, this is kind of your long drive swing. And so what ends up happening if we draw some relative plane lines, and again, the camera's angle's not the best, so we'll be pretty modest in the size that we draw here, but we're going to take the club well inside these plane lines, and we really start to lift the club up quite quickly. And so because of the camera angle, we're actually on the top part of that plane, but the darkness in the video we can't really see all too well, but it'll be quite evident when we get to the top how that right hip kind of gives all this freedom and we don't really have any lower body set. So if we were to see a front angle, we'd probably see a lot of sway off the ball or towards the back leg, which would create a lot of this ability for the upper body to have this massive swing. And so the really nice thing that we see here is as high as the hands get here, I mean, they're well above the head, is that the player does a really good job at actually having the lower body start before we even get to the top of the backswing. And this could be really important sometimes if we have a swing that we get to the top and we stall out too much. You have a tendency to really cast. And so a swing that is well over-rotated and is pretty much trying to go for maximum force, we're going to have something to help us not only initiate the downswing, but really trying to have that lower body initiate it would be the most effective. And so the player does a great job with that. Our club face and angle, really hard to tell at this position, especially this camera angle and the resolution, but we're pretty relatively on plane here. Definitely coming from a very high position, given the hands at the top of the backswing, but we're going to get a little over the top move, and the player does a really good job of actually clearing the lower body. And so we're going to see, because our hips are now just starting to clear and the hands are getting down next to us, is we're actually trying to shallow this out a lot. And so what ends up happening, because we're trying to have the club drop down, is the body's going to end up standing up very tall. And so classically we call this early extension. And so we end up getting a little bit more towards the golf ball as we go because we're coming from too far above. And so we try and stand up and almost move away from it. So sometimes when you have that front angle, you're actually going to see a little bit of a lean back here. We end up riding this wave pretty hard. And when the hands come down and through, we can see just how much we start to elevate from these last few frames forward as we're really standing up into the ball, trying to get as much force as we possibly can. And the thing to probably pay attention to the most here is the angle of the elbow. We zoom in a little bit, is that our elbow and right hand are kind of underneath the club, which is not a bad place to release it from. It's a very neutral position. But because our club face has been so far open, we're going to see in the next couple of frames, if we just pay attention to the elbow here, how we're going to start from underneath the club. We come forward to the next frame, we can already see that right elbow starting to pop up and rotate forward, and we get this really massive release, and we're having quite a bit of flipping. If we were to see the front angle, we'd see that left wrist starting to cup and go backwards, and the right hand really rolling over quite strong to try and shut the face as quickly as possible. And the right hip and now the lower body starts to return and go forward. And so the left elbow starts to really pop out. And so this is a good indicator that we're having a nice old juicy chicken wing as we go through. As we get up to the top and come forward, we actually do a really good job of getting our finish set. And unfortunately, this clip finishes before we actually see the flight of the ball. But I'll zoom in just for shits and giggles, but not exactly sure we're going to be able to follow this one all the way through. But we can see how we got a pretty decent trajectory. We're going forward, and our ball is going to be fading over to the right. Nothing too shabby with this swing. The hard part is going to be a lot of timing, and particularly for doing this type of a much overswing with an iron, we're going to have a really hard time getting some consistency with our yardages. But if we're just looking to grip it and rip it, we're going to have a nice little safe push hold fade out there.